What is up, everybody? Mr. Jim to my right, Mike Griffin from Vortex Edge across from me. Jim, we've been given the impossible task of telling folks how to choose the right optic for their AR-15 in 10 minutes. So
I was saying anything in 10 minutes is an impossible task. Let's be honest. We've proven that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we'll do some, full disclosure on the front end of this just to let people know we're not even going to try. But I don't think it's going to go. We'll see where this goes. So, why I say it's the impossible task, you're looking at the AR-15, possibly the most versatile, customizable firearm platform out there. Because of that, there's a variety of optics to complement the platform, depending on how you, I would say, primarily intend to use it.
Sure.
Now, you also don't have to stick to just one thing. You can buy multiple optics for the same firearm, or you can buy, different ARs and just have them all set up different ways. The choice is yours. But for us right now, the choice is to go through all the different optic platforms and hopefully help somebody choose what's going to work best for them.
Yeah. We've got a slew of guns on the table here.
Yeah, if you're watching.
Tell you what, only 50% of them are real guns, though. That's the fun thing. Some of these are the display guns. But because they make these airsoft guns so realistic nowadays, it'd be hard-pressed to figure out, aside from these big yellow flags or orange flags sticking out of the real ones.
Exactly. They are realistic, and actually that's why these ones are from the showroom. So if you go down to the Vortex showroom and you pick something up, you can, get a very, I'd say, realistic, fit and feel and perception of what it's going to be like on your AR.
I didn't mean to derail you. Maybe we should talk about airsoft guns sometime on here.
Yeah, comment below if you want to hear about airsoft guns down the road. So I think we'll go, I guess in some ways, I don't know, like small to big. Let's start with red dots.
That makes sense.
For a person with an AR, who, what's the who, what, where, when, why of a person goes, yep, the red dot is the right optic style for me, Mike?
So I think if you were to pick a red dot, it's kind of the general purpose solution for, when you think of the original AR-15, it had iron sights, and so it's not magnified. It doesn't, give me any benefit to being able to see better. But the red dot is kind of the one-for-one exchange for that. So nowadays, you don't see too many, unless you're buying something that's kind of a retro build. You don't see too many AR-15s that come with fixed iron sights. Some of them might come with backup iron sights included, that sort of thing. But most of them come with a flat top rail, and the quick and easy solution to get it very similar to what the original rifle would have been is to throw a red dot on there. A little bit simpler aiming scheme, so I don't have to line up a front sight, rear sight, target. All I have to do is line up red dot and target, but it doesn't have any magnification inherent to it. It's really relatively fast, sighting scheme acquisition, and fairly rugged, relatively inexpensive when you look at the whole spectrum of optics that we have out here. And it's just a good solid solution that you can do a lot of work with, but it doesn't offer me any of the advantages that some of the other items have. Now that being said, it's kind of the one that I default to the most. So in 20 some years of shooting AR-15s, I've shot iron sighted guns, and then I went to red dots, and then I went to low power variable optics, and then I went back to red dots, and then I went to a little bit more magnification, back to red dots, and so I just keep coming back to red dots because they just do such a good job.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean they can kind of cover a lot of bases pretty well, maybe not 100%, but pretty well.
Red dots are nice because it's at the point where, like you said, it's a really easy entry into an optic on your AR, and in many cases with modern ARs, it is, you're not going to have any sighting system unless you get an optic like this. So it's an easy way to get started, but also you're never going to outgrow a red dot. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, you got Navy SEALs and every alphabet soup, special ops, dudes and whatever running around with red dots on their guns, kicking doors. You know what that life's like, Mark, right? You
boy.
go kicking doors
I left
left
that life
and
behind
right.
me, Jim.
But anyway,
Not so, by the way. I don't want to be coming off
No,
as some sort of impersonator, Jim. But,
no, you did your
all
own
the
clandestine. It was more of like an individual thing.
all the respect for those guys.
But yeah, whether you're a beginner, you can figure it out really easy, really quick. But then it's also absolutely applicable in those whether it's up close and fast or just a general purpose optic to be able to hit something, anything.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you guys really said it all. But I mean, they're lightweight, they're fast. I mean, it's tough to beat. The target acquisition from an operations standpoint, simple. I mean, put the thing on the thing and pull the thing, parallax free,
durable, have really good battery life. So when you think about, hey, I can put this on a gun and hand it to somebody, and they don't have to know a lot about how the system works outside of aiming it and zeroing it. Like there's nothing really complex about it. And they don't have to worry about replacing the battery for a long time with modern ones. I don't like this is a Spark Solar on this rifle, and I probably won't have to replace the battery in that for a couple of years.
The battery will corrode before it's dead, honestly.
Yeah.
And every other optic we go up, I'll say up to from here. It's more I'm talking about like size and maybe I guess somewhat of the complexity of it or something. The reticle gets a little bit more involved, so you go up to even the holographic sight like the UH1 over there. It's a simple center dot, but it's got the ring around it, which you can use for a few other things. But this is just so simple to explain to somebody that, put the thing on the thing and pull the trigger. But yeah, it could be a pro or a con, right? So UH1, for example, has more stuff going on in the reticle. It's got the CQB holdover with the little triangle at the 6 o'clock position underneath the red dot to account for the offset of the optic over the bore height. And it's kind of got its own thing going on. But
I don't want to go too long here, but I don't know if we mentioned cost, and I feel like that. Did we mention the cost of a red dot?
I mean, we didn't talk about specific numbers, but generally speaking, particularly the red dot versus the holographic, to me, I always think of that's kind of the most affordable option when you look at this spectrum that we have. Holographic's a little bit more expensive than the standard red dot, and obviously if you're comparing like the most expensive red dot against the least expensive holographic on the market, there might be some overlap there, but like this Spark Solar is a little bit less expensive than the UH1, and then you move up, and we've got some other stuff that falls into other categories, but to me, I think of red dot, we've got a handful of red dot models that we offer, and they're all what I would say as a fairly affordable option. If you're just getting into the AR game, or you're working on building out a rifle that you don't specifically need magnification or a more technical reticle out of, like that's a good affordable solution that can do a ton of work. And I kind of want to touch on the battery life and simplicity. So if you think about like for a home defense gun, patrol rifle, anything like that, where you can, like I can just turn this thing on and I can leave it on for years and not have to worry about it. So it's always ready, whether it's, sitting in my safe or, next to the nightstand or whatever at home, it's ready to go as soon as I pick it up versus, some other optics that maybe aren't as efficient, from a battery standpoint, that I need to be more, there's a little bit ever so slight more maintenance to them.
Be a little bit more mindful of it.
Be more mindful of, hey, how do I manage this optic? Whereas it kind of goes back to, it's almost like iron sights. Like I install it, get it zeroed, turn it on, and other than adjusting the intensity for whatever conditions, if I were to go out and shoot in full sunlight versus nighttime shooting, that sort of thing, it's kind of just there and does its job, right?
Well, every other optic that you look at on this table, in terms of just the illumination intensity or efficiency, isn't going to be up to the snuff of a red dot. And that's the illumination, I guess, mechanisms that they use. It's different on these different optics. And, you look at the holographic optic, that is used in a similar case to the red dot. You have no magnification. It has its own benefits of having a really large window in a relatively short footprint with no distortion through the image whatsoever, or through the windows whatsoever. But it uses a laser instead of the little efficient LED in the red dot, so the one drawback to the holographic side, it would have every advantage if it wasn't for the fact that you use that laser, so it sucks up that battery a little bit quicker, so you get a little bit less battery life. That's kind of one thing there. But then, of course, in the other models too, you're having different illumination mechanisms altogether, but they all have etched reticles, so it's not like you have to have the illumination on for them to work. With the holographic and the red dot, you do have to have the battery functioning for you to see a reticle.
For sure.
Yep.
And so Mike, in your opinion, for a person that goes, man, I'm going to be using a red dot or the holographic similarly, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would be the tipping point where like, yeah, you know what? I think I'll go with the holographic.
So I think it's much more of like a personal decision than just strictly like, hey, you're going to be using it for this particular context versus this particular context. I have historically gravitated towards red dots. I just have always liked the kind of feature set and, the look of it. I think it is one of those things of like, it's what I've always used, so it's just what I've always used. I know some people really like the holographic sight because they have a little bit of a, technical reticle there. So if they're shooting up close, they can use that bottom triangle, at 6 o'clock. If they're shooting moving targets, they can use the 3 and 9 as kind of a lead reference point, those sorts of things. The window is really nice for, quick target transitions, even shooting under night vision, that large window is nice. I think if those are the things that you like, then those are going to be the things that you're going to gravitate towards. The other thing is, some people just pick this up, like for me, and I think at some point we have to talk about it, is astigmatism. And like I picked this up and it doesn't really look great to me. Does it matter? No, it doesn't. Other people will pick up a dot and they'll be like, oh, that looks terrible, whereas a holographic looks great. So, the reality is, I think much more emphasis is put on that than needs to be, because really you need to be target focused versus dot focused, or in this UH1 reticle focused. But every time I picked one up for years and years and years, and not exclusive to this model, but I'd pick it up and I'd be like, oh man, that's like really grainy to me and just kind of blurry. And then I would pick up a red dot and it didn't look great. Like it wasn't a perfectly circular dot, but it just looked better.
Well, that's not a function of the optic itself.
No, it's a function of my eye.
And not to do it, Mike, but so many people, they get an optic out of the box when they order it online, and they're in their half lit bedroom and they pull it out and they put a battery in, they crank it up to max brightness, and they stare at the dot that's 6 inches in front of their face, and they're like, it's blurry. And they're not looking at a target, it's not mounted to a gun, it's not any of that stuff. And that's really the best way to determine. But yeah, it's that is, the astigmatism can be a thing.
It is. And that is something to keep in mind, is like it doesn't really matter for these optics. And even when you get into some of the other stuff, if you're using it like a red dot, so like our 1 to 10, our 1 to 6, some of the other stuff that's low power variable optics, if you're on 1X and you're using it like a red dot, like don't focus on the dot, focus on the target. And if the dot's blurry or fuzzy or not a perfect shape, it kind of doesn't matter. Like put the dot, we talked about, put the thing over the thing and press the trigger. The focal point should be at the target, not at the inside of the
part of
optic.
The beauty of the functionality that it offers.
Yeah.
So both the red dot and the holographic are 1X optics, but you do with those platforms have the option of using it in conjunction with a magnifier. So maybe talk about magnifiers.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of 3X magnifiers on these guns. This is my teaching gun, and I think they're a great tool, particularly with like modern mounting solutions where you can flip the optic off to the side. So I can choose, like I have 1X, no magnification, dot, all the speed, nothing to be concerned about with like eye relief and that sort of thing. And then I can flip over to 3X and I can see better. So I can pick a refined aiming point on the target, gather more information, all the things that magnification brings to the table in a relatively small, lightweight, compact package that it just starts annoying me or whatever, I can pull it off of the gun and get it out of the way because it's on a QD mount, or I can use it separate from the gun as a monocular. So I don't have to point the gun at whatever I'm looking at, that sort of thing. That's a benefit that sometimes people forget about. But as a system, it gives me a little bit of magnification. It's a very rugged, package, and I've got all the benefits of the red dot or the holographic sight. So the other thing, if you're talking back to the financial component, is I can buy the sight, and then down the road I can buy the magnifier, right? So I don't have to make this big purchase altogether. I can do it in kind of a stair-step process. So okay, I'll start out, I'll get the gun up and running with the sight, and then 6 months from now I can pick up the magnifier and add a little bit of capability without making the sight that I invested in kind of obsolete.
Yep.
Or having to deal with hey, I'm going to sell this in order to fund the next step up in capability. So I think they're a really great option. Obviously, I have it on my gun. The other thing, kind of going back, we do have a diopter here, so you can clean up the image a little bit. And, it's just a really nice tool to add to a red dot or a holographic sight.
It's all a trade-off because between the 1-10 and the red dots here, you've got that prism sight, the Spitfire 3X, and that is a really neat sight. Now, that is a fixed 3-power optic, and the magnifier gives you 3 power. It can also be flipped away, so you can use 1 power. So you're thinking, okay, well, why get the red dot, or why get the fixed power prism sight over a red dot with a magnifier when I can basically have 1 or 3X, and over there I only have fixed 3X? Then that, though, I'd say the advantage is the etched reticle inside.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of okay, yeah, you get a little bit extended range performance potentially. You can see a target a little bit more clearly with a magnifier and a red dot, yes, but there's a certain point where I'm not going to say that you can't shoot a certain distance with a red dot, because everybody's going to go out and say, I shot one time at some odd 100 yards with a red dot, no magnification. But the thing is that, would you prefer to shoot at longer distances with an etched reticle that has more information on it? I think most people, I'll say, would say yes, and that reticle is pretty sweet. It doesn't require the battery to function. It can be illuminated, and in that very even more compact package, you're getting 3 power. So,
yes, and if you shoot with both eyes open, you can use it very similar to a 1X optic. So, focus on the target, both eyes open, present the gun, lay the reticle over the reference point that you're focused on the target, and shoot. Now, is it going to be, perfectly, 1X image through both eyes? No. Is it still very, very usable and kind of proven over many, many years? Yes. So, it has a lot of functionality in the up-close, fast shooting game. It also gives you that 3X, and you don't have to worry about battery life because you do have an etched reticle, and you have the benefit of an illuminated reticle, So it is a fairly decent option that is a good bit less expensive than a red dot and a 3X magnifier combined.
what do you think about if you're into buying 2 optics already? If you got to buy a red dot and a magnifier, what if you bought a fixed 3X or a fixed 5X prism sight, and then you got an offset red dot or a piggyback mount red dot? What do you think about that, Mike?
So I think that's a definite option. You can either run it, 3X, and then you would buy a separate mount to run an offset red dot that's, not magnified, or on our 5X, you can direct mount it to the optic, so it's on top. So it's basically just a little, you just pick up your, visual line or lift your head just ever so slightly so you can see through that 1X, mini red dot, or you've got, 5X right there in front of you. It's a super rugged, durable package with nice technical reticle, or you have the speed of a, mini red dot. So that is a very viable option that you can put to use.
What do you think you prefer? To put you on the spot right now.
I mean, I go back and I keep going back to red dot and 3X magnifier.
Yeah.
Now, that being said,
Because you're used to it.
Because I am used to it. I have considered getting one of our 5X. I think I would use it more if I shot, outdoors, more, and most of the time we're teaching on an indoor range.
Yeah.
And, you know, in that environment, this is more than enough capability. Even on our 100-yard indoor range, it's more than enough capability. If I had the opportunity to shoot outdoors more, I would probably consider playing around with the 5X with the mini red dot on top.
Right.
You know, I think that's something that I may have to put together and take outdoors a little bit.
Right. Every setup starts to people can modify them to start to get closer to the next logical thing, right? Because you got a red dot and you're like, oh, okay, well, I want to shoot a little further with it. I want to see the picture a little bit more clearly or closely. So you put a magnifier on it. Well, that doesn't fully get you to prism scope level, but it takes you closer to it. And then it's like, okay, now I got a prism scope. I want to put a red dot in conjunction with the prism scope, like we said, offset or piggybacked. And so now you have an etched reticle like the prism scope has, with a little more information, and you've got a red dot. You've got like 1 or 3 power, 1 or 5 power. So you've moved yourself closer to the low power variable optic, which is a 1, 2 something. But then you've gotten bigger with the low power variable optic. It's like everybody's always trying to see how many optics they can lump together, how many of the pros from different optics they can lump together in one setup by doing little tricks like that.
Yep. And maybe you guys brought it up, but did you guys bring up, we were talking a little bit about, a person's eyes, they might have an astigmatism, and the fact that if you do have the etched reticle and the prism scope, you're not going to experience that. And so I think that's another benefit to the person that goes, man, I kind of like the size, weight, profile of a red dot, but man, like with my eyes, it just doesn't work for me. I think that's when you can transition to a prism scope and you go, yeah, this has a lot of similarities, some similar functionality. Like I said, the profile and the weight, the way it looks, but you're gonna have that etched reticle that's there all the time, whether you do or don't have the illumination engaged, like you mentioned, Jim, and then you can illuminate it as well. So
yeah, a prism scope or a scope, same deal with the astigmatism thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that
scope.
So that's what they call them these days.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing to think about, is the user has to decide like what capabilities they need the most. So like I kind of touched on it, when I'm teaching, I almost exclusively, for carbine stuff, am shooting indoors, so 100 yards and in. And this gun accomplishes everything that I could really ask of it with the sight setup and that sort of thing. If I was exclusively going out and shooting at 200 plus yards at fairly small targets, maybe I'm hunting with my rifle and, I'm just engaging small targets, 200 to 500 yards, red dot and 3X magnifier may not be the optimum setup. Like, does it allow me to sight? Yes. Does it allow me to see something? Yes. Is it optimum for 99% of the stuff that I'm going to do with that rifle? Maybe not. Is it okay to have more than one gun? Yeah. Is it okay to have like a gun built like this that's got
I was looking for, Jim.
that's got a red dot and a 3X magnifier, and then have something else that has, this 3X guy on it, or a 1 to 10 or a 1 to 6? Or that 3 to 18, because the guns are set up for different applications. Yeah. So, like a lot of times we want all the capabilities because we think, well, maybe one day I'm going to have to use this gun to shoot at 800 yards. And it's like, yeah, maybe one day. Like, how serious is that requirement for that gun?
Well, the funny thing is that the gun you're holding right now with the Razor 1 to 10 on it it has the scope for doing all the things on it. Like, a lot of people are like, what's the super scope I can do everything with? It exists.
That is it.
This
is it.
That is it.
Yep.
And yet there are still plenty of instances of people not getting that and going with a red dot or, whatever, any of these other options, because everybody already knows. You hear the phrase, master of all or whatever, jack of all trades and a master of none. Master of none or something like that. Yeah. I'm really bad with phrases lately. I've been personally those up a lot. My apologies, but it's
the 1 to 10. And I like the Gen 3 Razor. Okay, I do, Jim. But like when you talk, you use that old saying. But it's like also to me that's the optic that comes the closest to like blowing that out of the water. Like I think it is both of those things.
But we got, and
Or wait.
that's the thing though, is you got to be realistic with this too. Is one of the notable things you talked about with the red dot before was that this is the thing that you can slap on a gun and get going right away. It's basically like the modern day version of iron sights. You know, it's the people's optic, right? And the Razor 1 to 10 costs. I mean, it's expensive, which is fine. It needs to be because that's what it takes to make something like that. And so part of the thing that makes it, you know, it's like, hey, that's the thing. That's the one that pretty much comes the closest to doing it all. It's also like, well, hey, I get it. It's also notably expensive. So in some instances, that can be the thing that. And, of course, the Razor 1 to 10 isn't the only optic that's a low power variable. Of course, there's 1 to 6s and 1 to 8s, and they all kind of start out at much more affordable, relatively speaking. And then there's a whole spectrum in between, you know, but it's just kind of.
Yeah. No, and that's what I was gonna say though. I mean, like that Razor 1 to 10, it's an example of a low power variable optic, but we certainly have other ones that are way more friendly to your pocketbook and have a very high level of performance, but still offer that 1x to 6 or that 1x to 8 or that 1x to 10. You know.
Yeah.
And so with this one, you have, you know, when you get into LPVOs, to me, you have to think about like what are the important things to you. Like, is just pure magnification important? Okay. Do you need, like, what level of technicality do you need in the reticle? Like, do you need something that gives you a little bit of information or a lot of information? And then do you know, obviously glass quality is always going to be a consideration when you look at the different levels, you know, price points of optics. But then the one that I always look at is, like, how bright is the dot or reticle going to be? You know, is it going to be a daytime bright dot, or is it illuminated but maybe not quite bright enough that at 1x in full daylight, you know, if I bring it up, I'm immediately going to be able to see a nice clean, you know, bright red dot. So the Razor line accomplishes that task. You know, it kind of checks all of those boxes, but you're also, you know, the price point is representative of that because it's expensive to pile all of those things in a package that's this lightweight and this size. But then if you don't need a daytime bright, you know, reticle or illuminator, then you can save a little bit of money there. If you don't need 10x, maybe you save a little bit of money there. If you don't need a very technical reticle on very clean glass, you know, like premium glass, then you know, you don't have to check all those boxes, and you can get something that's a little more affordable and a little more comparable in price, or maybe bridges the gap between this guy and, you know, some of the other options that we talked about previously.
Yeah. With these, I mean, with the optical quality too, it's these days it's like the Razor 1 to 10 is watching a football game on 8K. You're almost uncomfortable by how much sweat you can see on the players' faces. You know what I mean? Plenty of people watched plenty of football games on 4K or even 1080. Can you imagine? That's like old school now, and you can enjoy it. So I think that is absolutely similar to what you get with the different optical qualities. You know, very much doable. The Razor 1 to 10 will make you feel funny. You'll be like, I didn't even know I could see something that good.
I do like LPVOs because they are so versatile, though. Like, you know, a person, maybe they only have, you know, 1 AR, they have 2 ARs, and like, well, you know, I want it to be my plinker, and
you got to pump those numbers up.
Yeah, but, right. I mean, hey, you know what? We're all going to get there, right? You know, but it's my plinker, it's my this, you know, it's my home defense gun, but it's also my Predator rifle. It really is
you,
that
Mark.
dual. I mean, that is me.
You are the guy who's gonna, if you get a gun, it darn well better be able to hunt. Not that you can't hunt. I know a lot of people hunt with a red dot and a magnifier. But you want it to be,
especially,
not only have you grown accustomed to a certain lifestyle with a level of quality of equipment, but also you've grown accustomed to a certain style of riflescope. You've looked through far more etched in traditional wire reticle riflescopes than you have red dots. Far more. Whereas a guy like Mike's looked probably through more red dots than, you know, traditional optics. I don't know. I'm just guessing, but, you know, that's kind of one of those things, too.
I've definitely spent more time on a red dot than, you know, like our magnified optics. And that's, you know, just my background is more carbine, red dot, pistol, that sort of stuff. Even though, I don't know, 2008, I ran a LPVO on a carbine, you know, with an offset red dot. Like, I feel like that was not a normal thing then. And
you were definitely a trendsetter.
And I liked the advantages that it brought me, but I just kept going back to red dot and 3x magnifier, so
It just feels like home.
it does.
I mean, it's tough. It's tough to deny just the speed, the simplicity, the lightweight, low profile. Like, I mean, they're extreme. They are extremely versatile. They're versatile. It's like everything here is versatile in its own way.
Yep.
And I think, really it's just like kind of going through the different options. And when you are making that selection, just weighing what's important to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, like when our 1-6, the original Razor 1-6 came out, I got one of those and ran it for years and years and years, mostly because I was shooting outdoors more at a little bit. The distances were, all the 0 to 100 yard stuff, but then there was the 100 to 300, 400 yard stuff was more available. And I really, really liked that optic. That was before the 1-10 came out, and I ran that for years and years and years, and it is a great optic. Now we have the lighter weight model. LPVOs are an awesome option. But I think that also takes us into, kind of normal magnification scopes. We've got the 3 to 18 over here, which is something.
HPVOs? High power?
So people are trying to say like medium power
MPVOs?
variable optics and like high power variable. It's just a scope to me.
SPR, DMR, ABC, XYZ.
But
Whatever it is, this is a
BLT.
darn good scope. So this
It
is
is.
the Strike Eagle 3 to 18 by 44. For, I'd say, your longer range applications, I find that 3 to 18 to be just a sweet spot. of zoom.
Ryan turned off the clock. Did you notice?
Yeah, he's mad
just
at us.
gave up.
Yeah.
I tried to warn everybody.
You did. We gave that.
But this is, I look at this and I say, okay, well, this is definitely, it hits a kind of like a different use case, I guess, in a way, or goes into, a different realm. Definitely very useful and application specific, also very versatile, depending on how you want to use it. For, on the hunt side, I'm very drawn to this optic on an AR.
Oh, yeah. I mean, once you go to the point where the lowest magnification is no longer 1, I would say you're talking about a rifle whose primary role isn't going to be shot off hand, but more so off of a bipod or some sort of a rest, bags. Would you
supported
say?
somehow.
Some sort of support.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
it might be, barricade, bags,
Yeah.
bipod, tripod, whatever. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, not that not that you couldn't, right? But that, yeah.
You could do anything technically with any one of these guns, but I'm just saying your primary is a supported position of some sort. I mean, that's just sort of what makes it. That's how my brain works, at least.
For sure.
At some point, you gotta figure it out. Everybody's gonna talk to death like how, well, red dot you can shoot out to 1,000 easy peasy. And it's like, all right, well, let's be real.
Right. Where do you see like an optic like this shining on an AR? Like, what's the use case, Mike?
So if you kind of, without adding on a red dot, kind of like we talked about with our prism optic, a secondary red dot, primarily just that optic, anytime I need to shoot very, very small targets at, even as close as, say, 50 yards.
Okay, right.
If it's a 2 or 3 inch target at 50 yards, like I would like to have 3x magnification on the low end, if I'm given the time. That sort of thing. But then if we're pushing out to distance, and it depends on how your gun's set up. So if I have an 18 or 20 inch barreled 5.56 gun that's got hand loads that'll allow me to push the speed a little bit, or like this is a 6.5 AR-10 that I can really reach out with, then having that extra magnification is really nice. And I think sometimes people kind of fall into the old rule of like 1x for every 100 yards, and they think like, oh, this is a lot of magnification for a 5.56 gas gun, an AR-15 in its kind of standard format. But then you start to think about, well, what if I make that target not on a nice, clean, manicured range, and it's a white silhouette against a brown or green berm where it's going to really stand out, and I can pick it up with lower magnification options.
Or the spray painted white target has been shot so many times that it's gray now.
Yeah, so if you're the last dude to shoot a stage and it's a 6 inch target at 300 or 400 yards and it's up against a berm that doesn't give you a lot of contrast. Would you like to have more than 3, 6, 8, 10 power magnification, or push it out a little bit further? Would it be nice to have a little bit more magnification? Yeah.
Right.
If the gun is set up so that you're very unlikely to shoot anything inside of 100 or 200 yards, are you really giving up a lot by going to a 3-18 over a 1-6 or a 1-10? And you have gained something on the top end, along with having, an exposed elevation turret. You've got a more technical, or at least, what I would say is a little bit better reticle for that application.
Parallax adjustment.
Parallax adjustment. You've got some things that are kind of nice to have, not just raw magnification.
Well, I think this is like, okay, now we've stepped out of the realm of like, hey, this is my primary door kicker, kind of like what you were talking about earlier, Jim. And it's just a different application. But
we, as the optics manufacturer, we did things that we kind of also determined the primary use for an optic like this. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like putting the parallax adjustment, like the exposed elevation turret that's locking with a zero stop. That's also part of what goes into this, because the 1-10 is it is that very close to a master of many things, if not all things, but it doesn't have the parallax adjustment. Now, how much of a big deal that is, and that depends on what shooter you speak to. It doesn't have an exposed elevation turret, so we had to form fit it into its role as being able to do many things. And this one, it was kind of like, hey, we don't have to try and make this scope do everything, so we're going to put in some much more specific items.
Yeah, and I think that zoom range, it does allow you to shoot, I'd say, more accurately at increased distances in a professional or hunting setting, right?
Yeah.
Target ID is very important to know what you're shooting at.
Yeah.
And more magnification can certainly afford you that.
We've gone in... Oh, so what were you going to say?
Oh, and Mike brought up, potentially you could pair this with like a red dot on a 45 offset, and now you kind of back into a dual purpose, Even for predator hunting, I could see like, hey, this is, maybe I'm in a western state, open landscapes, you might get some longer shots, but maybe you get a pair that's burning in hot, whatever, and maybe you do want to transition to that red dot for the up-close stuff that, you just weren't ready. You're like, oh my God, surprise, and then you can instinctively, transition over. So
red dots are great like that. You can fit a red dot on almost any gun, it seems like. You know what I mean? Regardless of whatever the primary optic is. The primary optic might be a red dot, but if it's not, you can always
fit a red dot on,
away.
You can fit a red dot on anything, Greg.
I'm a gun, Greg. Can you fit a red dot on me? We've gone into every one of these on other podcast episodes more specific. So, one thing I know we didn't really get into a lot of, because I know it would be another 30 minutes, but this Razor 1-10 is the first focal plane optic, and there are many other low power variables. There's the second focal plane ones, 1-6, 1-8, 1-10. That's all stuff we have a low power variable podcast. I know the title of it. I don't know the number of it. It's LPVO equals LOVE.
Oh, yeah.
You made that title.
Yeah.
It's a good one. I always like it.
Thank you. It does for me. I like them all, though. They all serve their role, and it can be tough to pick, though, because you said early on, Jim, like, well, I like this, but I'd also like to be able to do this. Then all of a sudden, you end up hearing like, well, now that I'm here, I also want it to be able to do this. Then you end up there, but analyze the features and just, really boil it down. And I get caught in the game of like, well, I might. It's like, well, what's my 80?
Yeah. I got to say, a lot of people right now are getting guns for self-defense, home defense type deal. Get the red dot.
Yeah.
I'll just say, I mean, Mike, you're instructor here. You're far more of an expert. My opinion is get a red dot, because the range you're going to shoot on to practice, which we highly recommend, is probably, 50-yard range, maybe max. Most people have access to that just about anywhere you go. Maybe 25 yards, so it fits there. It's going to do great, tucked under your bed in a safe somewhere, if it's ready to go for that home defense scenario, something like that. You have a sighting system at least, and it didn't cost you an arm and a leg. And then from there, that's when you start buying more guns and figuring out other ways to use guns in really neat ways. I don't know, Mike, what do you think?
I agree. The red dot is the kind of easy button solution for the majority of people. It's hard to find ranges that you can reach out to further distance. I feel like where I am now, we have opportunities in central Wisconsin to shoot out to distance at times. But not everybody has that. Some people struggle to get a 50-yard range.
Yeah.
And so having a red dot is going to accomplish, all of the tasks. And I guess I should touch on, when I talk about like reaching out to distance, it's on smaller size targets, not like a full size silhouette target. If you were shooting at a full size piece of silhouette steel or something like that, like of course you can use a red dot and probably hit at 400 and 500 yards. Like not really a big deal. When I start talking about like, smaller 8-inch circles, 10-inch circles, those sorts of things, it's nice to have some magnification. Even on a silhouette, it's nice to have magnification. At 400 and 500 yards. So don't think that I'm like saying that it's impossible to shoot a distance with a red dot. It's just not optimized like some of these other things. And so for most people, if you put this on your gun and you go out to the range you normally shoot at, 25 to 50 yards, you're going to be able to do all the drills and practice to your heart's content and never really reach the limitations of the optic. Mm-hmm. And then maybe you go out with your buddy and he's got access to a longer range and you're shooting out a couple hundred yards, you're probably still going to be just barely touching the limitations of the optic.
Yeah.
And it's going to carry you for a very long time in your shooting experience, your training, etc. I'll also say, like, I think we kind of, like, I've noticed trends, like I've, watched the firearms industry long enough that I've watched people be like, okay, I'm going to try this thing, and then they see something that it doesn't do perfectly, and they try something else, and they see that, like, that doesn't do something perfectly. Just understand, like, none of these are perfect solutions that are 100%. They're going to, do everything perfectly. You got to, like you said, figure out what accomplishes 80% of your needs, and then buy another gun to address the other 20%.
Yes.
Or find something that maybe covers 20% of your needs, and then get 5 guns.
Yeah. 5 guns. I mean,
yeah. Oh, yeah. Just make sure
just
that
a different way to look
have,
at it.
Just make sure you always
like,
have
I don't
all
golf.
5
How
of
many?
them.
How many clubs are in a standard collection?
Oh, hundreds.
Oh, like golf clubs?
Yeah. What is an
Those guys
average
carry
bag?
around.
Like
that's our next product.
8?
We'll make an AR
Probably
bag.
like 150 to 175 clubs,
Yeah.
right? That's how that works. Golf.
Yeah.
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 I think
So, like,
give or
if they
take.
can have
bottomless
all
pit.
those different golf clubs, like, it's acceptable to have at least as many AR-15s,
Makes
Yeah.
sense to this guy.
right?
Yeah, I agree.
So,
Well, the other thing I like about this conversation is just like Mike's path in optics. I feel like we're like, and then you go this, and like, yeah, but the red dot, but the red dot, but they're all good.
Yeah.
Like I said, find your 80. If you want some of this information in writing, you can check out the blog that covers a lot of this same material, choosing the right optic for your AR.
It's
On the Vortex website.
It's not
on our blog.
handwritten by you, is it? It'll be illegible then.
Yeah, no, it's typed.
Good.
Not by me.
Okay, got it.
it would actually be really funny if it was just images.
Just an image of Mark's handwritten notes.
Yeah, I uploaded it. Cool. All right. Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, everybody, for listening. If you have any other questions on choosing the right optic for your AR, like I said, check out the blog. Give us a call here at Vortex. Or, sign up for a class at Edge.
If you're late for work because you thought this would only take 10 minutes, just tell your boss it was important. Send your boss the podcast.
Hey.
And say, hey, you should check this out. This is
It's
why
only
I was
10
late.
minutes.
Make them late for something, and then
Yeah, I'm sorry, sir, but your frame reference of time is off. This is only 10 minutes.
Right. It says so in the title. It's on the internet.
All right. Thanks, everybody.